Hi, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to the first Strategy Implementation Institute. I'm a pleasure to be here with my co-founder, Robin Speculan. I'm Antonio Nieto-Rodriguez, and I'm an expert in projects, project management. I was the chairman of the Project Management Institute 2016. So I hope you have a good time with us today. Robin?
And it's my pleasure to join you. I'm Robin Speculan. And 4 years ago now, Antonio and I met in the Middle East where we were both giving a keynote speech at a conference, and we started getting to know each other. And through our conversations, not only did we identify that we shared a passion on how to implement strategy, which most leaders were struggling with, but we also identified that we wanted to provide the means for leaders to be able to educate themselves in a gap where they've been taught how to plan, but not how to implement. And this has given birth at the beginning of this year to the Institute. And it's our delight to present the first ever webinar, which addresses the 7 mindsets that you need to be successful in business for the 2020s. What we're going to cover is initially why over 84% of implementations are still failing today, despite all the time, effort, and energy that's driven to make them work. We're then going to address this gap that exists between leaders and their ability to craft and execute strategy. We use the word implementation and execution synonymously. And thirdly, we're going to focus, most importantly, on what you can do to overcome the challenges during these extremely tough and challenging times. True or false? The statement on the screen. It's never been more true that just because you were successful yesterday, you'll be successful tomorrow. Those days are gone, which means leaders more than ever need both the ability to craft the right strategy and the skill to execute it. Over the last 16, 18 years, we've been constantly researching the state of implementation in different businesses, in different industries. And we were delighted to see a constant improvement up until 2016. And then we started to see something not so good. Implementation started to get worse again. After steadily improving for 14 years, there was a buck in the curve. What happened? Digitalization. In 2016, many strategies involved transforming their organization to become digital. And this is so tough that many organizations were failing, and it pushed up the failure rate to as high as people like Forbes and IBM and others were reporting that it was as high as 84 or 87%.
Yes, and following what Robin was saying, we are experiencing a lot of change, massive amount of change today. But if we look at the next, if we look at the next 10 years, the amount of change that we're going to experience, it's approximately more than the last 250 years. So we need to be prepared, and companies need to be ready, and leaders have to adapt as quickly as possible because change will be constant in our lives in the business world. And therefore, what you see in the organizations that both Robin and I talk is that one of the biggest gap or in skill sets and competencies is the one of the implementation specialists. You can find lots of experts in finance, in accounting, in marketing, in sales, in IT, but you cannot find implementation specialists, people who can take the strategy, can communicate it, can implement it, and creating the future of the businesses. So there is a huge gap, and that's what we're here for.
And we'd like to test that gap. So we got a bit of a fun quiz just to kick off our first webinar. Here we go. Let's see how much you know about strategy implementation today. What percentage of strategies are successfully implemented? 10, 50, or 16%? Well, if you were listening to our introduction, you will have seen it's around 16%. Number 2, how much of the strategy planning do you have in place before you start the implementation? 50, 80, or 100% complete? And the answer is B.
B.
Many people, when I ask this, they say C. They can get the strategy done, and then we can think about implementation. But no, you need to start thinking about the implementation because customers notice the implementation, not the strategy. So the more prepared you are as you start to roll out and complete the strategy, the more success you will have. Number 3, what percentage of people can articulate their own organizational strategy? 5, 35, or 55%? Well, some of you might be surprised to see from our research that it's 5%. 95% of employees do not even know their own company strategy. And if implementation's all about taking the right action, how can they take the right action if they don't know what the implementation is about? Which takes me to number 4. What percentage of people know the right actions to take to implement the strategy? 12, 32, or 42%? And the answer is only 12% of employees. So even those who do that small percentage who know what the strategy is, nobody's articulated what they need to do differently to implement the new strategy. Because by default, a new strategy means doing things differently. This one's a bit easier, 50-50. Is it better to take the wrong action or no action at all? And the answer is the wrong action. Why? Because at least you've got some momentum in the organization. Even if it's going wrong, you can then correct it, but at least people are used to doing things. And our final question, what percentage of leaders are good at both crafting and implementing strategy? 8%, B 24%, or C 48%? And the answer is only 8% of leaders are good at both crafting and implementing strategy, as a couple of years ago article from HBR showed us. So what we'd like to cover is 7 mindsets, 7 ways of thinking that will prepare you for the turbulent and challenging times ahead of us. The first one, leaders need to drive the implementation bottom up. For years we said it's top down, got to be top down. No more. Why? We'll explain. Implementation is an investment, not a cost. And we'll show you some of the numbers against that. Number 3, businesses used to be built to be stable. Now they have to be built to be fluid or agile, constantly changing and transforming. Number 4, we'll share the mindset of the voice of the strategy, how leaders have to think and promote the strategy, not just once from a town hall, but constantly nurture the communications. Number 5, the caliber of the people dictates the caliber of the implementation. Yet we don't invest in the new skills that are required for people to implement the new strategy. We'll talk about more about that one. In number 6, we'll talk about how with digitalization, the old measures don't cut it, and how you need different measures and what those are. And finally, we'll finish with a little bit of challenging the common belief that today we believe implementation drives culture, and no longer does culture eat strategy for breakfast. So number one, leaders need to drive implementation bottom up, not top down anymore. And to start this one, we've got another quiz for you. Would you prefer to have A, a good strategy implemented badly, or B, a bad strategy, but is implemented well? Now you have to choose A or B. I know some people go, oh, the answer must be C, but if you had to choose A or B, which would you choose? Many people, and Antonio and I have been fortunate to ask this question around the world, many people answer A. And the reason is, if I have a good strategy, I have the foundation to build on. If I have a good strategy, we're going in the right direction. And if I have a good strategy and it's not working to implement, I can correct it along the way. But B is the right answer. So let me explain why. First of all, nobody walks out their boardroom going, walks into their boardroom going, let's create a bad strategy. Everyone thinks their strategy is good. But you only know how good it is once you start to implement it. Secondly, why is B the right answer? Because what does good at implementation mean? It means inside the organization, you have the structure, the systems, the standards, the way of doing things, the tracking, the measurement, the skills learning. And when the strategy is not working, you know. Huh? Now you might think that's it, but yes. Many organizations don't even know if the strategy is working or not. So when they have that ability and the skill, they know and they make the corrections. Strategy is about making the right choices. Implementation is about taking the right actions. And when you have good implementation, you're then able to take the right actions. And the challenge we have is that leaders around the world have been taught how to plan, but not how to implement. And this has created a skills gap that Antonio and I are aiming to fill through the courses offered on the Institute. But of course, many of you, when you first heard the AB question, said it's a winning strategy and a successful implementation that we're targeting. Few companies get it right. IKEA is one of my examples. And just a bit of fun. So today, what's happened is leaders need to be implementing bottom up because the implementation is critical, and implementation today, especially around digitalization, means a lot of hackathons, design thinking, customer journeys, and these all happen at the ground and then get pushed up. One of the CEOs I work with commented that he used to go to his meetings to tell people what to do. Now he goes to his meetings to find out what's happening in his company. Which takes us to number 2. Implementation. Is it a cost or is it value add? Of course, when it goes wrong, it's a cost. On average, companies only deliver around 63% of their financial performance for their strategy promise, which Mankins and Steele published a couple of years ago in Harvard, HBR. CEB reported that failing at strategy implementation can cost up to 50% of your potential cumulative cash flow. And thirdly, poor performance reported by PMI results in organizations losing up to 109 million for every 1 billion invested. Antonio, this is your fields. So this is where he very much helps organizations. That's the cost when it goes wrong. But when you get it right, the payoff is tremendous. When you think of successful organizations, obviously they're good at implementation. CEB estimates there's a 39% better return on growth investments when you get your implementation right through alignment of the leaders. Willis Towers Watson reports that organizations who successfully implement have high employee engagement, a 19% increase in operating income, and a 28% growth in earnings per share. And Mankins and Steele article went on to share that the successful companies can achieve 100% of the full potential of their strategy promise.
Back to me, Robin. So thank you for implementation mindset number 3. As mentioned by Robin, it's about how we structure our business, how we create our business models. We thought that in the past, having stability in that aspect of the business was great, and it was great, but with the speed of change, we're looking at different type of business models and different ways of organizing ourselves. So yes, we were built, and from bottom up and top down, organizations were built to be stable, and that was the business model for years. But with the speed of change, as mentioned just now, companies need to be much more fluid, much more agile. They need to, as the speed of strategy crafting and implementation is increasing, they need to reshift the way companies are organized. There's a survey here from McKinsey, 8% of companies believe their business models will remain economical viable through digitalization. That means that 92% of their leaders think that they need to really change their business model to be successful in the digital world. This one comes from another angle, but Accenture recently researched thousands of leaders, and one of the key aspects that came from that research was that 79% of the executive interview agreed that the workforce of the future will be structured more by projects than by job functions. So we claim that this is coming to the end of job descriptions, meaning that people will not have job descriptions anymore. They will move into project roles, and every 6 to 9 months, once the project is over, they move to another role in the project. And a good friend of ours, Roger Martin, thinker number 1 in the world according to Thinkers 50, he told me that according to his view, 80 to 95% of the jobs that senior management and corporates do are an amalgam of projects. They don't have these structures where it's departmental and silos. They do have them, but actually the work is project-based, and it's about that agility that they need to do that. This is going to be a huge transformation in the ways companies are run and implementing strategy as well. Number 4, implementation mindset number 4. Leaders are the voice of the strategy. And a town hall meeting does not do it. Sorry, this is something that we insist all the time. Communication is crucial, and this is a term that we coined, voice of the strategy, as opposed to the voice of the customer, which is actually also very important, but leaders need to embrace the voice of the strategy. And this is one of the tools that we put in our online training, and that we insist the importance of the 7x7 rule. People need to hear the strategy measures, the vision, the objectives in 7 different ways in order to remember them, in order to take action. So back again, a town hall meeting doesn't make it. think about different ways of communicating. Sometimes it's just a face-to-face talk, sometimes it's through a newsletter, a video, but always think about the 7x7 rule. People need to hear it 7 times in 7 different ways. And this is actually very, very important in order to connect the top with the bottom, the strategy, vision, and crafting with the strategy implementation. What people want to know at the bottom, the employees, they want to hear stories. That's what we call communicate stories downward. They want to be inspired. They don't care so much about the numbers and return on investment. That doesn't relate to them. But what resonates, what connects with their passion is a strong message, a compelling vision. We want to put a dent in the world. We want to make technology simple for everybody. That's what creates passion, momentum, movement around the strategy and the vision. On the opposite, what people at the top, they want to hear facts, numbers, so that they can take smart decisions, informed decisions. So this is really important when you draft your communication actions, to think about the different aspects of how people want to or prefer to be communicated to take action. So facts going upwards to senior management, stories going downwards to the employees and middle management. The fifth mindset is about having the right caliber of people. It's been proven that having the right people, the best people, delivers often the best strategies and implementations. So, but we companies are not spending enough time and resources to educate them. That's one of the biggest challenges or gaps that we see in the field of strategy implementation, is bringing the right skills, bringing the right trainings to help people to become better leaders, better implementation specialists. That was one of the core aspects of why we wanted to build the Institute, Robin and I. This is a bit like a funny picture, but it's actually our reality. Most of the companies are working so hard. They're fully already booked for the next years, and yet they're launching new strategies, new projects, and they ask the same people who are already fully booked to carry out those strategies and projects. That doesn't work. So people and leaders need to learn to shift resources based on their priorities for the organization. They need to build them. They need to empower some of the future leaders as well.
And one of the organizations that I've been fortunate enough to work with for a number of times is Singapore Airlines. And the reason we highlight them about the caliber of the people is, of all the airlines in the world, Singapore Airlines trains its cabin crew for longer. For 15.5 weeks, you go through intensive training so that you know how to handle different situations, you know what the standards are, and very detailed. For example, when you put down the glass for the water, the logo of the airline must be facing the customer. Otherwise, why bother printing the logo onto the glass? So small details, and they constantly update them, training the staff. So just the other last year, I was meeting with the team over at Singapore Airlines, and they said to me they have a new standard now, updating for the length of ladies' eyelashes, which is something new that ladies are now doing. So they constantly review, constantly update. The cabin crew and the pilots are trained and retrained every 6 months. It's that commitment that they see people as an investment that they are allows them to then deliver the excellence. And mindset number 6, the way of thinking for this new, very different world that we're all living in. The measures we used to use will not work when you start moving into a digital world. What do I mean by this? In digitalization, you have to start thinking about how you measure the volume of business from digital customers, the number of transactions that they are making, and the increased business or the value from digital customers. And your old traditional measures don't cut it. So organizations have to rethink and put in new and different measures. And one organization that has done this is a bank in Singapore called DBS. And the gentleman on the picture is Piyush Gupta, who has the stewardship of the organization for 10 years now. And in 2015, he launched a new strategy across the bank called Making Banking Joyful. Huh? Now, hang on a second. You don't think about banking being joyful. In fact, research shows that millennials prefer to go to the dentist and have a drill in their mouth rather than visit a banking branch. That's how bad banking has become. And the leadership team, well, back in 2014-15, they saw an opportunity to use technology to take the pain out of banking and make it more joyful. For example, a mortgage application used to take 3 months, filling in lots of paper and a lot of effort. Now, the whole application can be done in minutes online using the technology. So this was their focus. And they realized they had to change their measures. So they went from their traditional measures to adding in acquire, transact, and engage. And this was 20% of the overall measurement of the whole organization. So now they track how many new customers they acquire, how much do they transact, and how much do they engage with the bank. And in 2017, they were the first bank in the world to be able to show that digital customers were worth twice as much as traditional. They cost less, and also through digital, they engaged more with the organization. So rethink, what are the right measures for this new world that we're living in? And our final mindset that we'd like to share with you, and this one's a little bit controversial, so I'll ask Antonio to come in as well. Why does implementation drive culture today? Because it's no longer culture eats strategy for breakfast. Drucker made the famous statement, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Most of us, if not all, have heard of it. But he said that almost 60 years ago. This was a time of the Beatles and a very different world. There was no such thing as computerization, digitalization, iPhones, Android, smart way of doing business. So why has it changed? Because today, strategy has become much shorter. The average life cycle of a strategy today is just 3 years. And if strategy is changing so quickly, the culture is now playing catch up. In Drucker's time, culture and strategy were in place for much longer, up to 10 to 15 years. But because strategy moves so quickly today, the culture has to transform just as quickly to play catch up. And what happens is, it's the way that you implement is driven by your culture. And some organizations say, hey, we don't even have time to craft strategy. It's all about experimentation, minimum viable product, throw it out there, see if it works. And their attitude is fail early, fail fast, fail forward. So does culture still eat strategy for breakfast? No more. Now strategy eats culture for dinner. So we've presented to you from Antonio and I's perspective what we consider 7 mindsets, 7 ways of thinking as we go into the 2020s. Which one is most important to you? If you have to choose from the 7, which one is most relevant and why?
You can put that in the comments of the video below. Yes,
Or you
Robin,
can add
maybe
remarks.
just adding to the, yeah, culture, it's strategy, or strategy, it's culture. It's back to the point of business need to be fluid, and it's about quick decision making on strategy. So I love what you said, Robin, of culture is trying to catch up strategy now, and it's a brilliant point to finish this first webinar of the Strategy Implementation Institute.
And Antonio and I are always conscious that half an hour after we finish, our audience have forgotten half of what we said. Well, Antonio says more with me than him. He makes more of an impression. But it's true. You know, Institute of American Research have revealed that half an hour after you walk out the room or you switch off the webinar, you've forgotten what we talked about. So our passion, our goal is to help you. And for that reason, we've launched the Institute. Antonio?
So yes, like at the introduction from Robin, our passions got together. We come from two different angles. Robin from the strategy, me from the project, and everything connects to making implementation happen. And that's why we created the Institute, to help leaders, to help future leaders, to help anyone who wants to become a strategy implementation specialist, provide them the tool, the training, the certification. So please visit our website and join us. We are always delighted to find new people joining our institute. I think this is a premiere. It's the first time we announce, but we've just signed an agreement with APMG International, one of the largest accreditation bodies, companies in the world, to provide and to certify our strategy implementation people who go through the training and have a credential which is recognized around the world, as strong as the PLP or the PRINCE2 or the Balance Scorecard credentials. And we're happy to announce that today in this webinar. So have a look on that one. And yes, we are conscious of the current situation. We believe there's still a huge gap, and there's a big opportunity for anybody to keep learning, to keep growing. So therefore, we have a promotion of 50% off membership and the course. So you can see the prices there. You can see that in our website, but I think for the value that you get, you will not be disappointed if you join us.
An initial feedback from our early adopters is the amount of content, the amount of knowledge, the templates has really been what's motivated and inspired them through the course.
And last, to finish our first webinar, we want to offer you access to one of our online courses modules, the Leadership Excellence. So if you're interested to experiment for a couple of weeks, 2 weeks, just email us. We'll share the email you need to write, and just have a look. It's for free. Just look what we provide. If it's valuable, makes sense, if it's attractive, just join us. It's a great deal.
Okay. So it's been our absolute delight to share with you our thinking. Please let us know which of the 7 was most important to you. Do you agree or do you disagree? Antonio, final thoughts?
Well, thank you. Thank you for being there. We had huge participation. We were delighted to see so many people joining us on our first webinar. So please be tuned. We're coming back very soon with another webinar, and we look forward hearing from you. This is a community we're trying to build. We are, putting some direction or vision, but we need everybody to contribute and share and build one of the most strongest communities around strategy implementation, which is much needed. So we're looking forward hearing from you and seeing you around and joining us in this journey.
And the email that Antonio was mentioning, If you visit the website on the screen and just scroll down right to the bottom of the homepage, you'll see it's info at the Institute. You'll find the address there. It's been a delight sharing our thinking with you. Keep safe, keep well in these turbulent times, and I wish you all the best.
Bye-bye. Keep safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you soon.